Hey everyone, this is Thom Armstrong, VP of Solutions at Amplience, here to host another Amplience Q&A. I'm super excited to be joined today by Igor Faletski, co-founder and CEO of Mobify, which recently got acquired by Salesforce. Igor, thanks so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So here we are in the US with our second or third wave. I think you all are a little bit more lucky in Canada, but it's hard not to talk about COVID and its impact on retail. What I wanted to chat with you about, though, was, we've seen all the things with store closures. We've seen, obviously, we share customers in the retail world. What else are you seeing out there in kind of adjacent industries like B2B, grocery, et cetera? What kind of changes are those folks seeing?
Yeah, so it's definitely been a huge shift to digital across all verticals, especially software essential goods. So we're seeing, for example, in food and drink and other fast-moving CG segments, almost 153% growth over the last 6 months. Sales-wise, so massive shift that is not just retail, obviously, it's everything across the board. I think what's been really cool to see is just how much more digitally mature verticals like grocery are getting. So obviously it's been a segment that hasn't been the first mover in e-commerce, and now we're seeing a lot of investment from these brands in their e-commerce strategy, definitely new expectations for performance, availability, contactless payments, buy online, pickup in store, curbside pickup. So the digital maturity of the industry has been like compressed and accelerated, and it's a lot of work for customers. It's a lot of work for us, the ecosystem, but I think it's really exciting for the shoppers to get all this new functionality rolling out over the next year or so.
Cool. And I know you all at Mobify were always kind of pioneers in the world of mobile, and especially with PWA. One of the things I'm always curious, right? Like, it's hard to argue with any of the benefits, speed, performance of PWA. What's really holding it back? It can't just all be Apple, right? Like, what's holding folks back from everyone having a PWA?
Yeah, so I think entering next year, we're finally entering the mass adoption phase of progressive web apps. I've been watching this with our team for years, but I think it's finally here. And just your question, I think it's been a bit of a process because the PWA itself is the top of the iceberg, right? You have to figure out how to have APIs for commerce and content functionality that you need to power that progressive web app. You have to make sure that your partner team or your internal team has the skills to build a React or Vue storefront, which is probably a higher average skill requirement than building standard websites. And lastly, you have to make sure that your processes on the marketing side of the house, your content management processes all work when it comes to this new front end. So it's a bunch of check boxes that have been checked off by the market of the last few years. And finally, I think it's here. So I'm talking to a lot of brands about their strategy for next year, for the year after, and more, it's a default thing to see a progressive web requirement. Because that's really the only way to deliver this next generation speed, agility, the user experience requirements that shoppers want to see on the web. So I think it's here, but definitely took a bit longer than I think all of us sort of liked to see.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We've seen an explosion of it over the past 6 months here as well. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk about with regards to PWAs, right? So there's always been that argument of what can you do natively versus in a PWA. And with apps, I feel like having a bit of a resurgence with store closures in the middle of COVID. How do you see PWAs like evolving or kind of closing that gap? Like what's something you would recommend for folks to look at when they evaluate PWA versus app, if you will?
Great question. I think it's really important to remember that, it's not like one touch point that will dominate and everything else is irrelevant, right? The web is really great for addressing a larger audience and for really making sure that the investments you make benefit a lot of people across the board, right? There's things that the web can't do, but it's also improving all the time. So for example, you're seeing things like, web push messages, WebXR for virtual reality support, new APIs slowly becoming available and make the web even better. So that's why we often recommend that brands look at PWAs before native to make sure that that impact is maximized, that positive experience delivered to the market. However, after that, there is an opportunity to invest in other touch points. It could be a native app for loyalty, for in-store, for AR, VR to do things that the web can do, and that's fine. Yet we find most of the time it's probably like a second step that we recommend after the web is already leveled up for brands. And there's other new touch points, being on Instagram with a live shopping experience, being in virtual reality. It really depends on the brand, on their audience, on what they want to see from the brand. But the web is just universally important. And I think for the next decade, that is not going to change. Even in kind of non-B2C markets, like B2B commerce, we're seeing a lot of interesting trends around more adoption of e-commerce. So some stats that we have seen, for example, 63% of B2B organizations plan that they will increase investment in digital over the next 2 years. And I think that's a sign that PWAs are going to continue to become more and more important, and not just in B2C retail.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I know we share a joint customer in MKM Building Supplies, which is certainly not your typical D2C brand or anything, right? They're someone a little bit different as well. So on the points of PWAs, and obviously I'm banging into this because this is a huge topic for a lot of folks right now. We had a developer debate recently, which was, should you buy or build, right? And I think pretty clearly we're on the build side of the house with folks like Mobify, or the buy, excuse me. What's your number one argument for buying versus building?
Well, I actually think the reality is buy and build, Tom. So nobody really starts from scratch, right? Even if you're a hotshot React engineer, you're still going to go to Amazon, you're going to buy the public cloud, you're going to use a whole bunch of APIs that you don't want to rebuild yourself, and then you'll build experience on top of that. So I think reality is you're always buying something to build your experiences on. And I think what we are planning to work on is how do we make sure there's even more great platform features available for Salesforce Commerce Cloud to make sure that our developers don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can really focus on unique features. So I think it's absolutely always a balance. It's never really just one or the other. And we want to make sure that we can save time for developers so they can differentiate their experiences and not kind of reinvent the wheel over and over again in 10 different ways.
We've seen, obviously, things go haywire this year with traffic to mobile devices, right? So everyone's working from home. So in theory, you should see desktop traffic, dominating for the holidays. Give us some great insights from the Mobify world on mobile's role in the upcoming cyber holiday season.
Yeah, well, I think we can all relate to the role of mobile in this new world. I don't know about you, Tom, but when I'm done with work, I'm probably going to take my phone and sit on the couch and look at my phone to do some shopping, right? So I believe that this year we'll see that mobile traffic continue to stay up and go higher because it's still more convenient to use that in many situations. And it's just amazing how much progress brands have made over the last couple of years improving the mobile experience, right? And it's not all there yet. Is going to continue to require effort, but it's just such a difference now versus 2-3 years ago.
What does the term headless mean to you, Igor, over at Mobify? What does headless mean?
Well, that's a big question. I think to me, headless means really a new era in building great modern experiences with APIs and having the agility for developer teams, for marketing teams, to move quicker than they could before with this new API-oriented approach. So headless obviously as a buzzword, you've seen it around for many years. I think now is the new default for building a modern architecture, and it's great that we're finally in that phase.
I love it. Well, you've always been great partners to Amplience at Mobify. We need folks like yourselves for people to realize the full potential of headless. We're so happy for your acquisition by Salesforce. Wishing you and the team a happy and safe holidays. And thanks so much for taking time to talk with us.
Thank you to you and your team, Thom. Stay safe and have a great holiday season ahead.